Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our 2024 complimentary webinar series covering the FAR, or Federal Acquisition Regulations. We are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and we're so glad you all could make it. Okay, so a bit about this series. As usual, all of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. The FAR has 52 total parts, and we will run through them sequentially each week on Wednesdays and Fridays at noon Eastern Time. The recordings and PowerPoints will be posted within 24 hours of the webinar's ending. You can find the recordings on our YouTube channel simply by subscribing to it using the link you see on the screen. There is no cost. You can find the PowerPoint on the SlideShare site using your LinkedIn credentials to log in. Again, there is no cost. We also offer sponsorship opportunities. If you're interested, please send us an email to hello@jenniferschaus.com. Okay, and now for how to sign up for this series. Unfortunately, there's no bulk registration, so you must register individually for each webinar. If you go to the Jennifer Schaus website, navigate to the section called the FAR, and you'll find the individual registration links. Also, the recording links will be posted here upon the completion of each webinar. Please note that we covered the FAR in 2020, so if you're eager to get a jumpstart, please find these historical recordings on our site. Navigate to the Webinars tab and scroll down to the section, the FAR 2020. Because it has been 4 years, many of the regulations have changed and been updated, so please use this as a reference tool only. And now a bit about us. We work with established federal contractors worldwide, helping them to navigate the market. Our services range from market analysis reports to contract vehicles and compliance. Some of the contract vehicles we support are listed here on your screen. For more information, please visit our website. Those are our services for federal contractors, but we also provide marketing and advertising services for organizations who are selling to federal contractors. We can add the extra muscle to your marketing efforts via our newsletter ads and webinar sponsorship to in-person events. Please email us and ask for a media kit. We are currently offering a discounted offer in our newsletter, which reaches over 34,000 subscribers. If you want to place an order or have any questions, please send us an email to hello@jenniferschaus.com. As you know, congressional hearings on both the House of Representatives and on the Senate side are open to the public unless otherwise stated. We have a list here of the upcoming schedule, including the date, time, building, and room numbers. Most meetings take place in the Dirksen, Rayburn, or Cannon buildings. If you are selling to any of these departments or agencies, attending the hearings can be a great way to gather information, understand the process, and also network with influencers. Please join us for our Summer Shorts webinar series this August. We will be hosting 30-minute GovCon webinars with industry leaders. The series runs every day for 2 weeks, starting on Monday, August 12th, and ending on Friday, August 23rd. The webinars will begin at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and as usual, they are free to join. Both the registration and the recording links can be found on our website under the tab Webinars. Here's a lineup for week 1. These leading ladies in the federal sector will cover various topics including contract finance, contract management, capture, pricing, and compliance. And in week 2, we will look at capability statements, BD, marketing, subcontracting, and M&A. Please join us for these upcoming complimentary webinars with various Apex accelerators. Jennifer will be covering GSA schedules as well as federal marketing for our local Apex Accelerator in Virginia. These are complimentary and online webinars, so please join us. She will also be teaching 2 classes for the Maryland Apex Accelerator, one on marketing and one on GSA schedules. These are in July and in December, and once again, complimentary. Our webinars are complimentary thanks to our longtime and generous corporate and in-kind sponsors. Please allow me to introduce them. We would like to thank our friends at GovEvents, the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 600+ webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert, the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, woman-owned, veteran-owned, HUBZone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. The Fairfax Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars. We want to thank them for posting our events and webinars on their calendar. The Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore their services, review homework recommendations, register for live training, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies, and appointment requests are handled in the order they were received based on counselor availability and due to high demand. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. Join the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce's monthly GovCon Council meeting to network with peers, learn about upcoming events and opportunities, and help to shape future programming. The meetings take place the fourth Tuesday of each month at 8:30 a.m. at the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. The next meeting will be on July 23rd. Do you want help winning government contracts? Bitsby can help. Users can find contract opportunities from federal, state, and local government. Additionally, you can search for teaming partners, incumbent point of contact, expiring contracts, compliance matrices, and also proposal templates. Create your login today at bitspeed.com. Bitspeed is an official partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration's E2G and Power to Grow program. Events are the ultimate engagement channel to bring government and industry together. 68% of government personnel report that each year they attend more than one event. The Federal Business Council, or FBC, has worked with government and industry for 45 plus years to create gatherings where ideas are shared and to help government achieve its goals. This includes agency interest days, cybersecurity symposiums, technology expos, and offsite meetings. FBC provides full lifecycle meeting planning and event management. With over 5,000 meetings under their belt, FBC has the experience, systems, and personnel to make your next event exceptional. Learn more at www.fbcinc.com. Now, last but not least, please check out our friends over at GovBrew. GovBrew is the most read GovCon newsletter, keeping thousands of GovCon professionals in the loop with news, updates, and opportunities in the federal contracting market, all in a fun and accessible email that only takes 5 minutes to read, and it's 100% free to join. It goes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. It's filled with great content, event postings, webinars, and more. We encourage you to sign up at govbrew.co, or you can use the QR code you see on the screen. And now the reason we're here today is to cover FAR Part 48. Let's meet today's speaker. Please welcome Marcos Gonzalez to the webinar. Marcos, we're so glad to have you with us today and are excited to hear your presentation. I'll put myself on mute and turn the floor over to you. Just let me know when you want to get to the next slide.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, Emma. As Emma said, my name is Marcos Gonzalez, and I'm an associate at McCarter in English. And my work primarily has been transactional, assisting clients with reviewing regulations and understanding what risks new regulations may pose to their business operations. And today I'm excited to discuss value engineering with you, Part 48 of the FAR. If you want to switch to the next slide, Emma, we can go ahead and get started. So when we ask what value engineering is, I think a lot of you who may be here for the first time or reading about value engineering for the first time have probably heard about it and understand that it exists, but have not been required to either submit a value engineering change proposal, or you've never taken that opportunity to submit one. But what is value engineering generally? Value engineering, the way I kind of want to introduce the discussion and describe it and characterize it, is as a method of solving a problem that occurs with contracts once you enter them, which is this. Once you've entered a contract, all sorts of things may change. For example, technology may change, or your business relationships with other vendors may change, your material resources may change, a variety of circumstances may change, and some of those may reduce the cost of performing that contract. Now, I characterize this as a contract problem because what this means is that if the cost of performance becomes cheaper for you, let's say that something is less expensive, but the contract is still paying you the same and requiring the same level of performance or the same type of performance, then you have no incentive to change the contract. You have no incentive to reduce costs and save the government and yourself money on that contract. So the way that value engineering solves this problem is by providing an incentive to the contractor to actually pass on cost savings to the government that they otherwise would not have. And likewise, in some instances, as we'll see here, and as we're kind of hinting at subpoint A and B here, you can be required to submit a change proposal, value engineering change proposal. It is not simply voluntary in some circumstances, and we can look at the circumstances when that would be the case. So to read here just from the FAR, and my presentation is primarily focused on the Federal Acquisition Regulation because I'm an attorney, and I think it's important to go through the FAR because it defines the boundaries of agency action and contractor action. So I think it's important to know these provisions. So First off, the way the FAR defines it is value engineering is a formal technique by which the contractor may suggest methods of performing more economically and sharing any resulting savings. And I skip voluntarily because I shouldn't have. It's important here. So A, it's either a voluntary method of performing more economically and sharing in resulting cost savings, or it's when the contractor is required to establish a program to identify and submit to the government methods for performing more economically. And as we'll see, this will depend on what FAR clause and which FAR clause is included in your contract. And Emma, if you want to skip to the next slide. So the purpose of value engineering is to incentivize the contractor to identify more economical ways to perform. And this doesn't mean that they can propose some other solution, right? So it's not saying, well, yeah, but if you do this other thing, you'll save $1 billion or $1 million, right? Essentially, you're doing the same thing that the government asks for, but you're just doing it cheaper. You have some other method of doing it that is cheaper. For example, let's say it's an outcome-directed contract where you are required to spray a submarine with a protective coating. And they have a sense of what protective coatings are available, and they list a couple of those and price out the contract accordingly. But you're privy to a new type of spray coating that would be substantially cheaper and serve the same outcome, right? The essential functions and characteristics are the same, but it would potentially save them money. Well, you would include that in your VECP, or VESP as I'll call it, and then you would submit that to the government. The essential thing is the same, the essential function and characteristic hasn't changed. Secondly, the purpose is to eliminate any factors that increase acquisition, operation, and support costs, ultimately leading to cost savings and improved efficiency in the execution of the contract. And it encourages contractors, again, it's an incentive-based approach, encourage contractors to propose innovative solutions and share the resulting savings, promoting a collaborative and cost-effective approach to contract performance. All right, we can go to the next slide here. Okay, so when does value engineering apply? And this is kind of a misleading title for the slide. Let's ask, when is a contracting officer required to include the value engineering change proposal clause in a contract? And that's for every contract over $250,000. So in every contract over $250,000, you will have the base value engineering clause with these listed exceptions here. So any R&D except for full-scale development, engineering services from not-for-profit and nonprofit organizations, personal services, providing a product or component improvement, unless the value engineering incentive application is restricted to areas not covered by provisions for product or component improvement. Commercial products that don't involve packing specifications or other special requirements or specifications, and when the agency head has exempted the contract from the requirements of FAR Part 48. And to stick on this for a second, just remember, if the clause is required, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to submit a VESP, right? As we'll get to the clause, the base clause is the voluntary provision, meaning if the contracting officer includes this clause on a contract over $250, you don't necessarily have to submit a VESP. You may submit a VESP if you think there are identifiable cost savings that you were able to achieve on the instant contract, but you're not required to necessarily, as we'll see. Okay, we can go to the next one here. And depending on what clause is in your contract, there are going to be two different approaches here. One is the incentive approach. So if your contract's over $250 and that base clause is included in your contract, you will be able to submit a value engineering change proposal voluntarily. Now the agency will review that VESP and within 45 days either reject it or accept it, or partially reject it, partially accept it, and any number of iterations there. But what you're able to do, as long as you're meeting these requirements for the contents, as we'll get to, for your VESP, you can submit that, and as long as it's good and identifies realistic cost savings, and the agency may approve that. Again, the mandatory approach, this is required if certain provisions are included in the contract. Then the agency requires and pays for value engineering. It's actually in the contract as a requirement, and you may have to follow specific value engineering protocols that the agency may have depending on the statement of work. As you'll see, or I'll just tell you now, the mandatory requirement applies if alternate one of the base clause is included in the contract, and that doesn't include the voluntary language in the base clause. It includes obligatory shall language. So I can just read from the base clause here. Generally, it says the contractor is encouraged to develop, prepare, and submit value engineering change proposals voluntarily. Whereas in the alternate one here, it says the contractor shall engage in a value engineering program and submit value engineering progress reports as specified in the schedule, and submit the VESP as well. So again, if your contract includes alternate one to the base clause, then the government has taken the mandatory approach, and you will have to submit a VESP as well as progress reports. If we want to go to the next slide here. All right, so there are a lot of definitions, and I wanted to capture the most important ones. It can get a bit confusing in terms of calculating the savings and seeing how they are spread out over concurrent, future, and instant contracts. But I think it kind of makes sense once you think about it with examples here. So instant contract savings are just the estimated reduction in contractor cost of performance resulting from the acceptance of the VESP minus allowable contractor development and implementation costs, including, so just minus I'm sorry, it's redundant there, just subtracting the contractors. Oh no, the subcontractors, sorry about that. So it's the estimated reduction in the contractor cost of performance resulting in acceptance of the VESP minus both the contractors and subcontractors development and implementation costs. Now that's important, right? Because if implementing the VESP is going to cost you money, the government will pay for that. Now, they are going to offset that against the savings, right? The cost that they're paying for development and implementation will be offset against the savings that they'll experience. So it's not a blank check to go crazy with racking up development and implementation costs if at the end of the day, it's not going to save them any money, right? But yeah, so also notice here it mentions subcontractors development and implementation costs. You should include the VESP clause in any subcontract as well, and in any subcontract over $250,000, and encourage the subcontractor to submit a VESP. And if you do, you're going to be able to also get payment for the subcontractor's development and implementation costs. And the same offset concern applies to that too. You shouldn't have them too high. All right, so that's instant contract savings. Concurrent contract savings for the net reduction in the prices of other contracts that are definitized and ongoing at the time the VESP is accepted. So let's say you have some saving proposal that will save you money on the instant contract, but it's a proposal that also will apply to other contracts, meaning the change will save you and the government money on other contracts once implemented. Those would be concurrent contract savings, meaning on other contracts that are not the instant one, you would potentially see cost savings as well. And we can go ahead and go to the next one. And future contract savings. So future contract savings are the product of future unit cost reduction multiplied by the number of future contract units in the sharing base. On an instant contract, future contract savings include savings on increases in quantities after VESP acceptance that are due to contract modifications, exercise of options, additional orders, and funding of subsequent year requirements on a multi-year contract. So again, just as if you can save, or just as you can save money on concurrent contracts, future contract savings can also result from the change. And net acquisition savings are the total acquisition savings, including all of these types of savings minus government costs. And government costs are defined, I didn't include the definition here, But government costs are an interesting category of costs that include operations and maintenance. Let me see, I believe it's operations and maintenance, and let me see the other ones. I don't have the definition. Yeah, so testing and operation and maintenance are a couple of government costs here. What that means is the government could potentially take additional costs because of your vest. And that could be increased costs related to operation and maintenance or testing. If they're testing your product or your services somehow, then those can potentially be costs that would reduce the net acquisition savings. All right, and I want to go on to the next slide. All right, so a VEST, as I'm calling it here, a value engineering change proposal. So the clause allows you to submit or identify contract savings and submit them in a VEST. And so a VEST means a proposal that requires a change to the instant contract to implement. And through implementation, it results in reducing the contract price or estimated cost, again, without comparing essential functions or characteristics, provided that it's not just a change to the end item delivery quantities or to the contract type. Meaning, you can't just say, oh, yeah, we can actually reduce the number of things we can provide you, because the net savings are per unit, right? So we are calculating them per unit, spread out by the number of units on the instant contract, concurrent, and future contracts. But if you're just offering a reduction in unit number, it's not going to be sufficient. And to contract type, you can't propose a different contract type only and have it count as a VEST. All right, let's go to the next one here. And to calculate net acquisition savings, I've already kind of intimated at this with government costs being reduced and development and implementation costs. So acquisition savings are realized when the cost or price is reduced on the instant contract. Reductions are negotiated on concurrent contract. So again, the per unit costs on the instant contracts reduced. With the concurrent contracts, you're going to have to negotiate modifications on those contracts. They won't automatically experience those savings, right? So you got to negotiate those reductions. And once future contracts are awarded, those should be awarded in light of the VEST. And so also acquisition savings are realized when an agreement is reached on a lump sum payment for future contract savings. Net acquisition savings are first realized and the contractor shall be paid a share when government costs and any negative instant contract savings have been fully offset against acquisition savings. So there are a couple of different ways you can get paid, and I'm not going to go in detail, but I'll just describe in general the two different types. So for future acquisition savings and concurrent acquisition savings, instead of having the government pay you separately and differently for the savings that they'll experience in the future and on concurrent contracts, if it's appropriate, then the agency and the contractor can agree to a lump sum payment on the instant contract for all future and concurrent contract savings. And the risks of this, are going to be salient to the government for future contracts. If you go out of business and promise future contract savings and they pay you up front for them, then that could be an issue for them. So that will be something to negotiate with the agency based on your history of performance and their security in your performance, in your ongoing performance. All right, we can go to the next one. All right, so for sharing acquisition savings, there is a formula for sharing in the savings. And again, you're incentivized to submit a VEST because you will share in the government savings. So not only will you be rewarded for it, but not only will the government be rewarded for the savings, but you will receive a proportionate share depending on the type of contract it is, and we'll review that in a second here. So on incentive contracts, and I'm using this term incentive contracts, but anyone who knows understands that there's a different type of fixed fee incentive contract, but we're not talking about those types of contracts. Incentive here is referring to the voluntary method of, the voluntary base clause. If that's included, that's an incentivization approach. It's not a mandatory approach. On incentive contracts, the contractor share of concurrent and future contract savings and of all collateral shall be paid as a separate firm fixed price line item on the instant contract. So you will have a separate line item if you're doing a vest voluntarily and it's accepted. You'll have a separate firm fixed price line item and you'll be paid on that. The contractor's share of future contract savings may be paid as subsequent contracts are awarded or in a lump sum payment at the time the vest is accepted. The lump sum method may be used only if the contracting officer has established that this is the best way to proceed and the contractor agrees. And again, that's a decision the contracting officer will make and the contractor has to agree to as well. All right, if we can go to the next slide here. Okay, so and again, I've kind of explained how the government is going to calculate savings based on unit price. So if you offer some method of savings and it wouldn't apply to any kind of contract that has a different type of end item, right? It might indirectly somehow, but it won't involve, or it won't figure into the government's calculation of the share of savings. So the sharing base for acquisition savings is the number of affected end items on contracts of the contracting officer accepting the vest. So it's the number of effective end items on contracts, including concurrent and future ones. And the formula is instant unit cost reduction, multiply the number of units, minus the contractor's allowable development and implementation. And it could be positive or negative savings, depending on the offsetting costs. And we can go to an example on the next slide here. All right, so let's look at an example here of how the per unit costs and are calculated here. So PopCorp submits a vest proposing a method of production that will result in a 98% cost saving per unit of popcorn. Ignore the popcorn. But would require the purchase of $100,000 in popping equipment implementation costs. The agency ordered 1 million units and pays for the equipment costs, which are allowable. How much are the savings? And I was going to ask one of you, but I won't. And essentially, we're going to times the number of units here, 1 million times 0.98 cents, and subtract 100,000, and that's your savings. We aren't figuring in government costs here because there likely wouldn't be with popcorn. So they're probably not going to see any testing costs unless they test the popcorn or any operation and maintenance costs. So yeah, we can stick with those. And I can do the math for you, but you more or less have it here. We can go to the next one. Okay, so again, the types of savings as we had defined here is instant, concurrent, and future. Those were the savings could be realized. We want to go to the next one. All right. So as I explained, the sharing rate is going to depend on the type of contract. So if a vest is accepted, the contractor shall share in net acquisition savings. They will share in the net acquisition savings according to the percentages shown in the table in the appropriate contract clause. So this percentage is going to depend on the contract's type. And again, even the regulations do this, so apologies. This contract type incentive here, this use of incentive is actually referring to the other incentive award fee type contracts here. So if your contract type is fixed price, incentive, or cost reimbursement, it will you'll have a different cost share rate. And the sharing arrangement specified in the clause there, I'm sorry, the sharing arrangement specified in paragraph A of this clause, incentive program requirement or combination delineated in schedule. So again, this use of incentive should be voluntary. I think if I were to rewrite the regs, I would use voluntary for incentive in this instance. So it's going to depend on whether it's, your rate is going to depend on whether it's voluntary or required, and the source of the savings, whether it's instant, concurrent, and future. So let's look at the table here and see how these are going to be calculated. And that's the next slide, please. Okay, so again, we have three columns here, and incentive in the middle, let's read that as voluntary. That would be base clause that's included in the contract. You've identified some cost savings through a modification of your operations, and you decide based on your business judgment, you're going to submit a vest. Mandatory is, again, if the base clause is included with its alternate one, and you are required as part of the program to submit a vest and share in those cost savings. Okay, so if the contract type is fixed price, and that includes fixed price award fee, excludes other fixed price incentive contracts, then the contractor share in the savings will be 50% for both the instant contract and concurrent future contracts. For incentive contracts, fixed fee or costs other than award fees. So for instant contracts, the same sharing arrangement as the contract's profit or fee adjustment formula, otherwise 50% for concurrent future contracts. And in the original base clause, in the original clause, there is a asterisk here. And the asterisk allows the contractor here, let me back up here. So on the first category for incentive fixed price of top middle column, there's an asterisk. And it says 50%, but the contractor, the CO can at their discretion increase that to 75. So they can make that share higher for the contractor. So for the incentive type contract, and think about it like this: if there's an incentive type contract, then the contracting officer, it would make sense for them to kind of just build in this fee arrangement into their formula into their incentive formula, right? I don't think it would make sense to have a complete separate vest approach to the cost savings. So often, this is why you see this is why you see this separated here, because they could potentially include those savings as your profit fee adjustment formula. Then for cost reimbursement, you have 25%, but as high as for 50%. And again, this is due to an asterisk in the table on us, and it's very small. Make sure to read that. So if the clause is included with its alternate, again, that means you're required to submit a vest. And you'll see 25% savings for both the instant contract and concurrent and future contracts. So there's a 25% rate. And again, there's a 25% rate for incentive fixed price or costs other than award fee contracts. It's the same sharing arrangement as the contract's profit or fee adjustment formula for instant contract. Otherwise, it was 75% for future and concurrent. So again, for the instant, it's just the sharing rate, and 25% for concurrent and future savings, and 15% for cost reimbursement type if it's required, if the alternate one is in the contract. Okay, and if you want to go to the next one. All right, so you have identified some method of saving the government money, and you think you can get a little bit higher rate of payment through the contractor cost savings as well. So what do? Well, you submit a VESP, a change proposal. And that should include the following here. So you want to describe the difference between the existing contract requirement and the proposed requirement, and the comparative disadvantages and advantages of each, a justification when the item's function or characteristics are being altered, and the effect of the change on the end item's performance and any pertinent objective test data. So here, again, we don't want to change the end item that the government is requesting in the contract. So our VESP shouldn't provide a radically different solution. Now, there could be insubstantial differences between the type of solution you're offering, right? But the essential characteristics, the essential functioning characteristics should be the same. So what you would want to do here is highlight the similarities that are essential between your proposal and what the government initially asked for, and essentially play those down. Say I mean, you want to be honest in your change proposal, but you want to emphasize the similarities, and you want to perhaps even highlight any advantages in those differences that you are proposing, right? And underplay any change in the end item's performance unless it is better. All right, so then separately you want to do, or included among this, you want to do a list of analysis of the current, or sorry, a list of analysis of the contract requirements that must be changed if the VESP is accepted, included any suggested specification revisions. So if the agency did include some detail, for example, going back to the submarine hub protective spray coating, if they did reference in their contract a certain type of spray coating, but they were just unaware of this new type, you can, for example, list the specification change that would be required due to your VESP. And then you want to obviously identify the unit to which your VESP applies. All right, if you want to go to the next one. And then you want to include a separate detailed cost estimate for the affected portions of the existing contract requirement and the VESP. So you want to submit your cost estimate for your VESP, including any implementation and development costs, right? These have to be allowable. And so the cost reduction associated with the VESP shall take into account those costs, including any amount attributable to subcontracts under the subcontracts paragraph of this clause. So you want to be sure that you include subcontractor implementation and development costs in your VESP. I don't include it in the proposal here, or I'm sorry, in the PowerPoint here, but you cannot submit multiple VESPs. So you want to get this in your initial one. You can't say, oh, we can do even more cost savings, so we're going to submit another VESP and do that every year. Do it once the first time and do it right by capturing the subcontractors' costs if they apply. 5, you want to include a description and estimate of costs the government may incur in implementing the VESP, such as testing and evaluation and operation and support costs. Again, these are government costs here. So you're going to estimate those for the government. And you're going to predict, and this inclusion is a little strange here because sometimes the contractors are not in a position to do this, but predict any effects the proposed change would have on collateral costs to the agency. So collateral costs to the agency are different than government costs, although they overlap, which is strange. Collateral costs are operation and maintenance, the cost of government furnished property, and let's see, there's one more. Logistics support. So if you were saving the government logistics support costs, you would want to estimate those and include them in your VESP. Because you could potentially save in collateral costs if they can be estimated. If it's difficult to estimate those, then you won't share in any collateral costs that the agency benefits from. So 7, you want to include a statement of the time by which a contract modification accepting the VESP must be issued in order to achieve the maximum cost reduction, noting any effect of the contract completion time and delivery schedule. So if you have a time-sensitive cost proposal where perhaps it depends on the shipping rates active at the time, but you know, or there's a steady increase in shipping rates over some future period, not a great example, but you would want to include any kind of time-sensitive considerations in your VESP and make sure that you're understanding the maximum cost reduction when that would be achieved so the government can act on that appropriately. And then identify any previous submissions of the VESP, if it's perhaps been rejected, include the date submitted, the agencies and contract numbers involved, and previous government actions, if known. All right, if we want to go to the next one. Okay, so I had previously mentioned these clauses, and I would recommend if you're thinking about looking or learning more about value engineering, just read the base clause, because the base clause includes all the information you're going to need to know about what to include in your VESP. It's going to include all the relevant definitions, including acquisition savings, collateral savings, all the instant and future contract savings, the definitions of costs, and how to submit these things, and also the sharing rates. So all of that information is included in the base clause value engineering, including this table of cost savings. And the alternate one is when, again, when the program office decides to include a mandatory value engineering requirement where you would be required to submit a VESP. And the architecture engineering would apply to those contracts and construction as well. And there's not really any substantial differences between those clauses. with the exception of the share that contractors can share in the savings. There's a little bit more restrictions on architecture engineering type contracts with that respect. So those are the clauses that you would see. And if you want to go to the next one, I'm kind of walking through these here. Okay, so again, the base clause includes all requirements and all the information that I've kind of already explained to you here. We want to go to the next one. All right, so architecture engineering, this clause, again, this is just from part 48 where it's explaining when to insert the clause. So the contracting officer includes this one here in solicitations and contracts whenever the government requires and pays for specific value engineering effort in AE contracts. The value engineering clause is not included in solicitations and contracts for architect engineering services. All right. And the next one, and again, this is for construction here, and it's going to be included in any construction contract over the simplified acquisition threshold, which again is $250,000, unless an incentive contract is contemplated. So the contracting officer may include the clause in contracts of lesser value if the contracting officer sees a potential for significant savings, and the CEO shall not include the clause in any incentive type construction contracts if the head of the contracting activity determines that the cost of tracking collateral savings, I mentioned this previously, if it's determined that tracking and computing collateral savings is too difficult, then you use that clause with alternate 1. And you wouldn't share in any collateral savings as the contractor there. So, and that's if the cost of computing the savings and tracking them is more expensive than the cost of the savings, or potentially, then you would not see any of the savings as the contractor. And I left room for questions, but we're not going to be able to do any questions. So I want to thank everyone for your time. And I think value engineering is not a topic that's really spoken about that much, but it does provide contractors an opportunity to actually pursue the cost savings that normal businesses would otherwise implement. So you can overcome any kind of limitations that you otherwise would see as the contract imposing on you with respect to cost savings by voluntarily submitting a VESP, or if you're required to do so, you would submit that as well. So if you have any questions about value engineering or any other topic related to government contracts, feel free to reach out to me at my email here. I'm happy to help you with any matters you have. So thank you very much for joining me today, and please reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you, Marcos, for an informative presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. As mentioned, you can always catch the recording on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, and you'll find over 600 webinars on government contracting there. That's it for today's webinar. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you, Emma. Take care, everyone.